North Korea. We've all heard about North Korea, whether we're in school reading a textbook or on the couch watching the news, or maybe just slumped in our bed scrolling through our YouTube recommendations. And with all of this information dumped on us, one thing seems to be a common theme. It's restrictions on its citizens.
The North Korean regime limits the freedoms of religion and of the press, enforces discrimination based on gender and race, gives out harsh punishments and sentences, and subject individuals to forced labor. However, although there is much evidence that this is happening there, none of this information can truly be confirmed because North Korea denies much of it. We have sources where we found our information, but none of it can be certain as the government has a tight control on what kind of information can leave the country. Much of this is based on first-hand accounts from defectors, people who have fled North Korea, and released detainees or prisoners.
First of all, North Korea is huge on restricting freedoms, such as religion. Now, North Korea's constitution claims to permit the freedom of religion, but much evidence points against this. Christianity specifically is greatly prosecuted. Hypocritical, I know. In fact, since 1953, 200,000 Christians went mysteriously missing, which kind of makes me think, I wonder where they went. Foreign missionaries are also greatly looked down upon. One of them was sentenced to hard labor for 15 years for anti-government agenda, and another one spent 2.5 years in harsh labor camp for plotting to overthrow the government. Coincidence? I think not. Plus, everyone is practically required to worship the Kim family. They're pretty much treated as the gods of the country, and anybody who does not treat them this way would be severely punished.
North Korea also cracks down harshly on freedom of expression and of the press. This means that the media is heavily censored and journalists are tightly restricted. In fact, North Korea remains one of the most censored countries in the world. Overseas phone calls are pretty much impossible in the country, and only an elite few have access to the internet. A large minority, limited to special individuals such as certain university students and researchers, may have highly restricted access to North Korea's own version of the internet, which is filtered by the state. In addition, all radio and TV sets must be registered and can only have access to government station. All of this is part of an attempt to limit all flow of information from the outside world. The North Korean government also owns all the news outlets that broadcast in North Korea, while foreign journalists have to tread a very fine line when visiting the country. These reporters are often accused of being liars and can get arrested for trying to overthrow the government. They cannot have cell phones or any device that would broadcast a GPS signal and are in constant presence of a special tour guide. Like with their citizens, North Korea strictly monitors these foreign journalists. It's also hard to gather information, and talking to citizens is especially discouraged.
The issue of inequality was common in North Korea, but is never really addressed. Women, as you can probably guess, were not in a great situation there. They were deprived of education and job opportunities. Not only that, they also faced torture, rape, and other sexual abuses with no one to turn to and tell, especially because no one was really aware that sexual assault was a bad thing and an issue of human rights. Women were also forced to serve time in the military, which is the case in a lot of countries, but in North Korea the conditions were so bad that a lot of women stopped menstruating after a few months of being in the military due to malnutrition and stress. Those with periods were forced to reuse feminine products and were forced to wash them, but only after the male soldiers were asleep, because they were shamed for it. During their menstruation cycles, most were continually told that they were sick and should be ashamed, sometimes even by their own grandmothers. Of course, racial inequality is also big in North Korea. Other countries' people mostly aren't allowed to enter the country, and North Koreans aren't able to leave either, so people don't really have an idea of other countries. Even so, propaganda posters are posted all around the country, and a big target is the United States. Examples of what the posters could say would be information about North Korea so easily crushing the US, and how our leader protected us from these, words that I can't even say on camera. Posters aren't the end of it either. School textbooks, dictionaries, and magazines also contain propaganda. For example, a math textbook could say, There are 3 members of the People's Army and this many US. What is the ratio of these people? Dictionaries define foreigners as beasts with very, let's just say, vivid descriptions. In a recent North Korean art magazine, a picture of a child with a toy machine gun was shown next to a beaten snowman. The caption said, "The American I killed." Now, if this isn't racial propaganda, I don't know what is. As for sexual orientations, I don't know if I can even call it inequality because North Korea is so closed off that most people don't even know or have a concept of what homosexuality is. For example, one gay man spent his entire life married to his wife, unhappy, yet not being aware that he wasn't straight until he escaped from North Korea. Oh, and also, domestic violence is not reported and even widely accepted. Like, man, North Korea's disregardance of human rights never ceases to surprise me.
In North Korea, people are denied a fair public trial and can be detained for a wide range of crimes, all different in levels of severity. Their punishments also vary from labor camps to death sentences. North Korea also enforces collective punishment, which means that an entire family may be punished if one member is convicted. Once imprisoned, people often face torture, sexual violence, and abuse, while being forced to work in poor conditions without proper clothing, often in the cold winter. These camps are usually rampant with disease and starvation. Even regular citizens who aren't found guilty are subject to forced labor. Students are forced to work to fund their own school and government campaigns. Most men and unmarried women are assigned jobs by the government. However, these occupations do not pay well, if they offer any salary at all, and so these people are forced to find other methods of employment to make ends meet. Since people cannot be at 2 places at once, most of these individuals opt to be present at their more reimbursed position, but if they are reported to be absent from their assigned job, they may be arrested and sent to the labor camps. As a result, these individuals must bribe their assigned employer to allow them to not show up to their given role. People are also sent to work overseas, almost as slaves, to places such as China, Kuwait, and Qatar. Once they arrive in their new country, their workplace and residence become what can basically amount to a prison. There is no freedom of movement, and these workers are constantly monitored. In addition, their wages are seized by the government, and their earnings make up a bulk of North Korea's overall income.
So ultimately, what is our verdict? North Korea tightly restricts its citizens' human rights. The government securely controls the media, and it is one of the most censored countries in the world. They prosecute those who do not conform to the beliefs of the regime, despite claiming to have freedom of religion in their constitution. North Korean society is full of inequalities. The state discriminates against women, foreigners, and other minorities. The government also detains individuals or even whole families unjustly for crimes, all in a wide range of severity. These people often faced harsh conditions in prison and were subject to torture and sexual assault. In addition to these injustices, North Korea subjects its citizens to forced labor both at home and overseas. I mean, you get to decide whether this is fair to their citizens' human rights. We're not here to share our opinion, only to provide the facts and maybe try to sway your opinion just a little bit, because human rights is an important issue and it is important that we become aware if there is an abuse of it, and not leave out any controversial facts.